Okay, welcome to another video, LA 301 students. I wanted to spend a little bit of time going over Chapter 6 in your textbook. Chapter 6 introduces us to a kind of different sort of they say, which is the naysayer. So unlike the they say that you're going to be doing with your papers, in which you introduce early in the paper and establish your conversation of what they are saying, with the naysayer, that appears later in the text after you have made some of your own arguments and begin to imagine possible objections to them. So I'm going to go over some slides here with you. This chapter really explains that including a naysayer increases your credibility as writers and helps what you have to say about the topic. Graff and others recommend staying with the naysayer discussion for a few sentences or even a full paragraph in order to treat that point of view fairly. And they even suggest labeling naysayers, which we'll talk about in a few minutes as we progress through these slides. So let's go ahead and jump ahead here. So, all right, had to straighten that out. Having some issues with my presentation program here on my Chromebook. So anyways, so some of the benefits of planning a naysayer. So a naysayer, think about this. The book gives us a really nice example in the beginning of the chapter, where there's a woman who is writing about dieting. So her book, Kim Chernin, and I'll read right from the text here. So planning a naysayer, and this is on page 79, planning a naysayer in your text is a relatively simple move, as you can see by looking at the following passage from a book by the writer Kim Chernin. Having spent some 30 pages complaining about the pressure on American women to be thin, Chernin inserts an entire chapter entitled The Skeptic, opening it as follows, and I'll read directly from the passage here. At this point, I would like to raise certain objections that have been inspired by the skeptic in me. She feels that I have been ignoring some of the most common assumptions we all make about our bodies, and these she wishes to see addressed. For example, she quotes, "You know perfectly well," she says to me, "that you feel better when you lose weight. You buy new clothes. You look at yourself more eagerly in the mirror. When someone invites you to a party, you don't stop and ask yourself whether you want to go. You feel sexier. Admit it. You like yourself better." So what is happening here is that Chernin is inserting objections in kind of a unique way. She's using a kind of dialogue back and forth with herself and this other person that happens to be her own inner skeptic. So it's kind of neat how she does that. So some of the things we need to keep in mind when we're inserting a naysayer into our text. So in other words, if you can think about a debate, I think this might be helpful. So good debaters are not people who can only argue their point and that's it. But good debaters are people who can anticipate who their naysayers are going to be during the debate and to kind of come prepared with responses to objections that they will anticipate are going to be said to them during the debate. So much as with a debate, the writing process follows kind of that same format. So what do? Well, we have to anticipate objections to the position. So when we're beginning our argument and formulating our argument, one of the things that we need to be worried and concerned and thinking about is what are others saying about it. So I have my stance on this issue. What are some people saying who disagree with me? So anticipating objections to your position. When you insert a naysayer into your argument, you will be more, not less convincing. Okay? And in doing so, you're going to show your readers you respect their intellects. You're not just giving one-sided arguments. It's somebody that can come out in a debate and simply state their position and do it really well does not make them a good debater. What makes them a good debater is having that, as well as being able, again, to respond to critics. So strategically, you're initiating a counterstrike by anticipating objections by your readers. You give yourself more to talk about. So a lot of times students say, well, I don't know what else to say here. Well, this gives you a good opportunity to expand your writing a bit by inserting a naysayer into your text. Finally, you answer questions that may otherwise be hanging in the air. Because you have a topic, which would be controversial. If you don't address it, your readers may be asking, why is this person not saying anything about the other side of the issue? So how do I do this? Well, again, remember, anticipate objections. Really important is to represent those objections fairly and make sure that you answer the objections as well. These are all very, very important points whenever you're figuring out, how do I do this? How do I get started? Keep these in mind. Your book, Chapter 6, gives some really good templates for entertaining objections. These are just some examples. So here's one here. At this point, I would like to raise some objections that have been inspired by the skeptic in me. She feels that I have been, and this is from the Chernin example. Yet, some readers may challenge my view by insisting that blank. Of course, many will probably disagree on the grounds that blank. So again, these are just templates that you can use to introduce the naysayer into your work. Remember, important point to keep in mind here, the naysayer should not come at the beginning of your paper. You're gonna first introduce your stance and your arguments, then use these templates to insert the naysayer into your paper. Okay. One important thing to keep in mind is that you must represent the opposing views accurately. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, once you've introduced an opposing view, you have to represent and explain that view with fairness. So making sure that you are being fair in what others are saying who disagree with you. In doing so, you will bolster your credibility with your readers, making them trust you. Okay? When you have objections, stay with them for several sentences or even a paragraph, Graff and others recommend. Take it seriously. And even if you do not agree with the objection, make sure you don't mock the view you oppose. You can drive away people who don't already agree with you. Finally, put yourself in the shoes of someone who disagrees with you and ask yourself if they will feel offended. This is on page 86 in your textbook, by the way. So the other thing that you have to think about is how to answer the objections that you bring in. Okay? Very important. You don't want to answer them so well that you convince your readers to take the views of the counter arguments. Okay? That's very important. So how do we do that? Well, these next few bullet points can help with that, I believe. So first, make sure to give reasons why you object to the counter arguments. Don't simply dismiss the argument. So you don't want to just kind of, push the argument aside without making some kind of reasoning as to your objection. So don't simply dismiss it. One good way to handle the argument is to agree with some part of the objection. So we'll look at some templates on how to do that in a minute. And then let me just read through these. Actually, these are page 88 because I don't have a slide for them here. So these are some examples of templates for making concessions while still standing your own ground. So here's 4 examples. The first one: although I grant that the book is poorly organized, I still maintain that it raises an important issue. That's one. Proponents of X are right to argue that blank, but they exaggerate when they claim that blank. Another one: while it is true that blank, it does not necessarily follow that blank. On the one hand, I agree with X that blank, but on the other hand, I still insist that blank. So again, these are good examples of a way that you can make concessions, agree with part of the objection, but standing your ground, making sure that your argument is still seen through the objections themselves. Okay, that is all I have for this video and for this chapter. We will be practicing with these the next time we meet in class. Thank you for watching and listening. Again, and as always, if you have any questions, concerns about the content of Chapter 6, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.